Mm. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Santa Clara Valley Open Space Authority. Today we have an exciting program called Let's Talk Tule Elk, Interactions During the Rut. And this is with our local enthusiast, and I'd like to think expert, Michael Hunt. Take it away, Mike. Go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we can start the slideshow. And people, if you have any questions, please do feel free to put them in the chat, and we will answer them as you go along.
Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Today we're going to talk about what's going on with the elk today and up on the ridge here at Coyote Ridge. We're about in the middle of the Tule Elk rut. Tule Elk rut is about a month earlier than other species, either the Rocky Mountain or the Roosevelt. And so we're moving along pretty well in the rut. The last presentation we did a month ago was about general characteristics and how to identify them and look for scat and sign and tracks and that kind of thing. And maybe the next time we do a presentation, we'll talk about, we'll have more of an open forum and maybe a guest speaker.
Karen was asking, what is the rut?
So the rut is the breeding season for Tule elk. It's when the males go round up or adopt, let's say, more generally, they just kind of take over a group of cows and calves, and they kick out the spikes or the young bulls, and yeah, their testosterone is flowing very well, and yeah, they're ready to do some breeding. So it usually runs from the last week of July until maybe the end of September. Although there's some that kind of happens after that, but it's kind of, yeah, not officially in the rut program, I guess. Anyway.
The follow-up question to that is Nancy is asking, why is the rut so much earlier than the Rocky Mountain elk?
Slightly different species. They're more accustomed to this environment that we're in here in Central California, semi-arid. They just seem like they get started early, and even though they start in August, they do not seem to, be bothered by the high temperatures or the heat. Yeah, so it's just the way they grew up, the way they evolved, I guess. So, yeah.
Neat.
Okay. So theoretically, this will work.
There we go. We can see your cursor. Cool. And we can see everything's good to go.
Okay. So we talked about this a little bit the last time, but basically that even during the rut, the elk are on a pretty regular schedule. They will, in the morning, they'll eat for a couple of hours from from 4 until 6 or 7. And it's basically a 2 to 3 hour schedule. They'll then around 8 o'clock or so, they're kind of filled up, and they'll go find a place to lay down and nap a little bit, chew their cud, and then after an hour or so, they'll get up and start eating again and move about a little bit more, and then stop and take another nap, and in the evening again, another 2 hours of eating, and then later on in the evening, after the sun goes down, they'll probably stop and take a nap. But it's a 2 to 3 hour schedule all around the clock. And so no time of, no downtime, no watching TV, no nothing, no surfing the net. So here's a little fun I got a picture of. Probably got a little bit too close, but this was like 6 or 7 years ago up here on Coyote Ridge. Mom was about 150, 200 feet away, and she was not happy with me.
You weren't really that close, were you? Were you like, was it a telephoto lens?
No, this was a short lens. This was
wow.
I was only about 6 feet. I was about 6 feet away before I actually found him in the grass. And so he or she was just laying down, not too much looking at me, but she knew I was there, and so did Mom. And Mom was excited. She said, "Hey, what are you doing there?" So she's barking at me because she doesn't want me around her calf, and she says, "Get away." But anyway, another time, earlier this year, actually, I ran into a herd, and it turned out that I actually stumbled right into the middle of them, and I didn't realize it. They tried to escape going up the hill and through a fence, over a fence, through a fence. The one little calf was maybe a week old, or 2 weeks old maybe, and just did not know how to get through a fence. And he was not, he or she was not very happy. So she's screaming. I don't know if, I hope you can hear that. Anyway, she's calling to Mom, who has crossed over the fence, and says, "Hey, I'm stuck here, come help me." So pretty traumatic experience, but survived. Oops. One of the things that I like to do is watch how they interact with each other, even outside of the rut. But here's a group that was up behind here a couple of years ago. And there's about 6 things that I'd like you to pay attention to while we go through this video, and see if you can pick out those 6 things. You can type into the chat anything you see, and we'll talk about it. Okay? There's not much sound here, I don't think. Let me see. Yeah, they're just having a good time eating. And you can tell it's probably, I don't know, maybe it's January. It's probably January because the bull hasn't dropped his antlers yet. Anyway, here they are. And there they go.
Uh-oh.
What was that all about?
Something scared him, huh?
Yeah. Pay attention to the next couple of clips. They're kind of, you can see some elk with their ears twisted back here, tilted back. So elk have a, I call it social distancing. They have a distance that they maintain while they're in the herd. Maybe it's a couple, 3 feet around them that they are kind of conscious of. And if anybody offends or gets into that social distancing area, and they're not that particular cow's calf, let's say, then they will complain. And so this elk here turned around and chased off the other elk that actually kicked at it. So did anybody have any comments about that they saw that was interesting, or questions about that?
So they have like a hierarchy even amongst the females?
There is a hierarchy in the whole herd. Yes, there is a older female that is usually the top of the chain, top of the hierarchy. There is then from that female on down, there is an established pecking order between all the cows and all the younger cows. And lower down this pecking order are the yearling bulls, let's say spike bulls, and then at the bottom are the calves, which have their own internal little pecking order, but it's not so well defined in the whole herd. The calves are kind of allowed to run anywhere, and then the bull herd as well has a pecking order, of course, and so there's a clearly defined and observable pecking order that you can see things are going on here. So anyway, at the beginning of this video, you saw them eating, and then for some reason there is a secret signal that I don't understand here, but they all look up at the same time in the same direction and see what? there's nobody there, right? There's nothing up there. I'm the only person on the hillside. So it's like, what did they decide that was interesting that they needed to look at? And the same thing occurs here when, I'm not moving towards them. I'm just sitting there with the camera, and suddenly they decide that they need to run. There's nobody around here to spook them, but somebody in the herd decided it was time to go. And generally it's the lead bull or lead cow. And so then they're off and running. They don't go very far, maybe 100 yards or so, and then they stop because they're not really too excited here. But you see these two cows here are talking about social distancing, and then in a bit you'll see another interaction here. Here's one where this cow kicks that one, and he says, "Hey, wait a minute, what are you kicking me?" And she turns around and chases off two other ones that are lower in the social order. So hopefully that's helpful. So yeah, here's a little picture of an elk. I think there's some more pictures behind here. So this was the same hillside pretty much. A couple of years later, this was maybe 2018, I think I got this. There's 6 elk, little calves here wandering around. Pretty cool. You notice the spots are not quite as brilliantly spotted as maybe white-tailed deer or mule deer. They're kind of, since they're in this desert environment, they're kind of blander looking, I guess.
Are they are they like other kinds of deer where like they don't have a smell when they're babies, or do they still have a scent?
I think I think they all have a scent, but it's really faint when they're young.
Oh.
And it's not, we've seen, there's a case where a guy with a bird dog, a dog that goes looking for birds and has a very good smell, walked right past Tule Elk laying down 5 feet away, walked right by him, didn't even see him, didn't even smell him. So it is very faint. I clearly can't tell it, but the other thing that's fun is usually if I go out at night and I'll see them in the evening, they're eating grass along the hillside, and around dusk they'll start to play, especially the youngsters, or the calves. They'll start to play. And here's a little video I got from, or you probably have seen. I got it from the web somewhere. I don't know why. I'm not sure there's any audio here either, but they love to play and they'll chase each other. They have a game of tag that they play. And of course they love water. They do play in the water. They swim very well. There's a story about a little fawn that was only a week old that swam the Yellowstone River and made it across to mom on the other side. So water is, they love water. So I think I missed one video here, didn't I? There's one more that I missed. I'll have to go back and see. But anyway, yeah.
They love to play. Look at them.
Finally. Cool. Yeah. Come on. There's one more. Maybe it shows up later. Anyway, so right now in the year, of course, we're in the middle of this July through October rut season here. Last week of July, first week, or last week of September, basically. And then after the rut, things quiet down quite a bit. They grow their winter coat, and so they'll look a lot of scruffy, like the ones in Teri's background that you may have seen. They're going to eat up a lot of, grass is going to start to grow now. The rain's coming, and so the grass will be growing. They're going to eat as much as they can and rest up. Come around January timeframe, the bulls and the time of the year is changing. The sun and the temperatures and the day length is changing, and that triggers the bulls to start to drop or shed their antlers. And then come springtime, actually as early as February, we start to see calving, and it runs all the way through. In June, I've seen calves being born. So that's kind of their once over lightly. So yeah, the antlers are kind of interesting. The bulls are the only ones that grow them. They're shed in January, typically, for the oldest. That's another thing that's interesting. The oldest and biggest bulls will shed first because just they need to grow. You know, they're going to grow a big set of antlers by the end of July. They need to get an early start, I guess. And then later on, the younger bulls, and then later, maybe in March, the spike bulls actually shed theirs. It takes about 3 to 4 months to grow them. And you'll see some pictures here coming up of different sizes as we go along. Come around the first part of July, end of June or so, the velvet, which is the sheath around the antlers that carries the blood and the minerals and all that up to the antler, to the bone. The ossification begins and the bone hardens, and then the sheath or the velvet falls off, or they'll rub it off. So that's beginning of them, trashing away at elderberry bushes or trees or wannabe trees, as we'll see in a minute.
Hey,
And then
we do have a question about what are the elk eating right now with everything so dry and barren?
well, yeah, they will. The other day when I saw them up here, they were below the Valley Oak, and there was a lot of pigs had dug it all up, and some thistles had grown in there. And I'm watching this cow eat thistle heads. It's like, how can you eat those things? They're really pokey, but she was grabbing a hold of the top of the thistle head and just chewing it, pulling it off. Like, yeah. Anyway, that's not usually what they eat. Typically, they're going to be eating some dry grasses that are in the bottom of that, under the oat grass or whatever. But yeah, they'll eat.
Oh, sorry. Interestingly enough, I found out from one of the cattle ranchers that I used to think that the brown grass was like, ew, why would you want to eat that? And he said that actually when it turns brown is when it pushes most of the sugar into the blades. So it's actually like, I guess supposedly it's like the most nutritious time.
Yeah.
Would be
Yeah,
like,
it's actually not that bad. I have not tried it personally, but the other thing I should mention is that along the ponds and wherever there's a little creek, a little spring, for example, there will be fresh grass growing. And a couple of years ago, I had a game camera set up here, and I got lots and lots of pictures of the elk coming in, and just every night they're eating this really fresh grass below, right next to this spring. So there is grass to be found.
Michelle has a couple of questions too. She was asking how large is the Tule elk population in the South Bay, and is the balance between the elk and the predators okay?
The second question, the balance is perfect. We have a good number of elk. We also have a number of coyotes and mountain lions. So the balance is working out pretty well there. The herd right now in this area is, well, it's been a kind of a strange year for me. Typically the elk in this area of north of Metcalf hang out here in this side of the hill, but since the horseback riders have been coming through here the last couple of years, they've pushed the elk up and to the backside of Coyote Ridge. So we don't see them here as often as we used to. Right here, we used to have around a herd of 30 cows and calves, and then maybe another 6 or 7 bulls, typically. South of Metcalf, out on the Coyote Ridge that Open Space owns, they've seen up to 60 elk out there, and which probably means that there's 40 or 50 cows and calves and maybe a dozen or so bulls. And we can talk about that some more at the end. The last slide has some information about that.
Okay.
Anything else?
Dave wanted to know if they eat acorns.
They do. Yep, they will eat acorns. They've been around the trees here recently, and they've been eating acorns off the ground or pulling them off the trees even. and eating leaves off the trees as well. So, yep, they like acorns. So, so as I mentioned earlier, the spike bulls are going to be the young ones, a year old, basically a year old kind of bull. They're going to grow a single spike, and you'll see them hanging out with the cow herd generally until the rut begins, and then the herd bull kind of kicks them out. The second and third years, they add a few more tines. They get into the fourth year, and they're getting to be fairly large and almost big enough to take over a herd. Usually in the fifth and sixth year, they'll have 6 tines or maybe 7, and they will be competing and challenging for a harem. After that, they keep adding bulk to it until they get to be, let's say, 10, 11, 12 years old, and they're getting really old, like me, like they're 80 years old or something, and their antlers don't grow as big anymore. They're not competing for a herd or a harem at that point. But yeah. Can you guys see this? Or is that?
Yeah.
Anyway, this is Teri's picture from, or maybe it's Ron's picture from Coyote Ridge, and I forget now.
It could be Keith too.
Anyway, this bull is probably late April, May time frame. He's got a nice start here. He's got maybe 4 or 5. He's probably going to be a 6 pointer. But yeah, that's what they look like in the spring. There's plenty of velvet growing here and hair. They're growing longer and longer. So here's some more. Here's a picture showing. This came from San Antonio Valley, Red Creek area of Henry Coe State Park, and you can see some of the older bulls are pretty well developed already, and then some of the younger ones have just gotten a start. So this is a bachelor herd, they call it. Probably June timeframe, or maybe May. It's middle of May. Of course, the bulls are starting in June, or maybe the first part of July. They start to bugle. Testosterone levels are going up and up and up, and they're going to start bugling. So let me see if I can play this one here. And once they get together and start, well, early on the younger ones will do some play fighting, but once the rut begins and there's a herd bull and maybe a challenger shows up, they're going to start banging antlers together. Oh. So there's a video or it's audio of some elk clashing here.
Can I play that other sound from the bugling?
I've got another one on bugling if you want to, this bottom one here, hang on. Let me stop that one there. If it's done. So this is a longer bugle from 2 years ago.
Squeaky.
So this was up on Coyote Ridge.
Ooh.
I've got a video of this coming up. That should be it. You got one to play?
Yeah, just this one real quick.
Okay. Yeah, that sounds interesting. The bugle can start out low with a grunt and then go up real high pitch, and then sometimes ends with a grunt or 2 or 3 grunts at the end to emphasize the point, I suppose. There's an echo in there, huh?
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
Any more questions?
What age do males begin to rut?
Usually they're not big enough until about 5.
Oh.
I mean, they would like to, and they will challenge and sometimes sneak in when the herd bull is distracted. Doesn't mean that they can't breed, but yeah, they're just not big enough to take over a group of cows, typically.
Kind of reminds me of elephant seals.
I think so. So towards the end of the rut, and I should have included this thing about, oh, so you want to be a herd bull, do you? Yeah. So a herd bull doesn't get much sleep. You know, he's up, on guard all the day, 24 hours a day. Doesn't get time to eat. Doesn't get time to drink, and is just basically chasing younger bulls away or trying to sheepdog the cows together. So by the end of August, typically, their main herd bull is pretty exhausted. And then the challengers have a chance to come in, and younger bulls might have a chance to come in and push them out of the way. But anyway. Oh, hey, come on. Yeah. I don't want this to play.
You might be able to go to the next slide and it might stop.
Yeah, I'm trying to. I hit the wrong button. So as I was talking about earlier, elk will strengthen their neck muscles. They'll clean their velvet off of their tines, and they'll use trees, elderberry bushes, coyote bush, pretty much anything that's handy. In this case, this elk is right below their eye. In the front of their eye, they have a gland that is a scent gland, and they'll use that to mark trees and territory. And so this bull is actually smelling this wannabe tree, and also doing a little, strengthening of his neck and cleaning of his antlers. So that's what's going on here. So let's see if I can get this to go. And he did a good job of tearing up that sign that's on there. Ripped it all out. But you can see him smelling right there. And he uses the gland below his eyes to mark that tree and let everybody know it's my tree, it's my territory.
What? They have a gland below their eye?
Right in front of the eye, right here.
Oh my goodness.
Let's see if I can get past this now. There we go. So this is the one rut from that you heard the bugle from a few minutes ago. This was from 2016, a few years ago. And actually, what's interesting about this one is that they never, well, there's some audio here, but yeah. So the bull elk like to be smelly, stinky, and this is one of Justin Fields' cows here. He's going to bark at that cow because he's just not happy. He got bumped out of the herd, so that's why he's walking away. He's the loser for a day anyway. So this is one of the things that they do a lot, of keeping the cows in line, and goes sheep herding around, keep cows off. And here's the two bulls again. The guy who you just saw a minute ago walking away, and the herd bull here. They're doing a lot of posturing here, and they're raking the ground, basically saying, "I'm bigger than you are. I'm meaner than you are." And so they do this side-by-side walk. Sometimes they do a circle, but this is a side-by-side, and they'll turn in unison here and walk the other direction. And basically showing off. They're standing on their tiptoes, trying to look big. And one thing that's pretty interesting, watch right here. You make a bluff charge and the other guy picks it up right away. From this point on, they basically walk over the hill and out of camera range, and I never see them ever actually butting heads. But this particular bull on the left is still around and still has that deformity on his antler. It seems to want to regrow. I don't know what that's all about, but this came from the rut over at Tule, San Luis Preserve over by Los Panos, and I got a chance to see some really fun stuff. I was there for a couple, 3 or 4 hours, and filled up my camera a couple of times with video. Anyway, here's a little interaction going on. These two bulls are walking, parallel walking here. One is a little bit lower down in the ditch there. But these are big, much bigger than the ones we have around here. There's a lot of points and a lot of muscle. But yeah, this is it's amazing that they can see, but they have eyes in the back of their head or something. So what you're looking at is 650 or 700 pounds of, or times two, actually, two guys banging away. Here he's chasing off one of the other youngsters here. And here he's checking out the cows that he still has. And when they're fighting, the antlers are clanging together. If there's any other bulls around, they hear that, and they'll come running because they know that the herd bull is busy, and they'll try and sneak in and take an opportunity. You guys are fighting again here. This is a different pair here. Serious. I wouldn't want to be in their way.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
Hey, Nancy was asking it that if the herd bull loses, do they have to leave the herd or the area?
They'll leave the herd because they've been kicked out by the challenger, and they will, as we saw in that last video, that bull wandered off to the left past that cow and went up on the hill about maybe 150 yards up the hill and just laid down for the whole day. Did not move, did not do anything. The next day he was back and he challenged the challenger, let's say, and he won. So he won it back the second day. But yeah, he was kicked out. He went, took the whole day off and rested up and came back and won his herd back. So yeah. So later on in this, I'll show you, there's a place where you can actually record with California Fish and Wildlife any elk sightings. And we're going to talk about the different elk here. So we have the Rocky Mountain bull, Rocky Mountain elk, basically Northern California, Eastern Oregon, Washington, on all the way east from there to Wyoming and South Dakota and North Dakota. Along the coast and Western Oregon are the Roosevelt bull, which are the biggest ones. And then down here in southern part of the area, Central Valley, from Colusa to Owens Valley to Tupman, we have Tule Elk, are the smallest of the group. The Roosevelt live up in the forest, heavy forested, heavy pine areas of Western Oregon, and the Rocky Mountain bull live in the mountains. The Tule Elk live in this semi-arid kind of wide open plains, similar to what you might think of as a pronghorn country or a semi-desert country, maybe. Their reaction to being threatened is to get up and run in the open. Run through an open field or open pasture, open meadows. Running away is their mechanism of avoiding predators. The other two elk are more used to a different strategy for evading, and they will run, but generally run into a forested area and try and hide out. And so there's a different way of, a different reaction to a threat between the different species. Just for some beginning, initial Tule ID, here we've got some cows with a kind of a, maybe this is a October picture. You see the calf here in front has lost its spots, and they're all of these animals are getting their winter coat, which starts in October and November. Nice big white rump, little short tail. Here's another animal that has a big white rump and a short tail, but it's not an elk. Any ideas?
What is that?
So on the left, you have the Tule elk, which are going to be, these are females. They're maybe 450 pounds or so. On the right, a pronghorn, which we have way up north in California on the northeast corner. Yeah, pronghorn are up there. I haven't seen them around here at all in my 15 years of watching. They're going to weigh about 100, maybe 120 pounds at the most, maybe less than 100 pounds. So there's a big difference in size. The pronghorn is only going to be a little over 3 feet tall at the most. So anyway, for some people who've said they've seen them, I mean, it's possible that you look at the rear end and you say, oh, but think about the size. The other thing is that Tule elk will generally go over fences or through them. Pronghorn will never go over. They'll never jump. They'll always go under. So, a couple of pictures I got from somewhere showing the difference in size. And so you got the big old moose on one side and a Rocky Mountain elk on them in there, whitetail, mule deer, caribou, and a pronghorn down here on the right-hand side. So hopefully that's helpful. Here's another picture showing relative size to a human being. Yeah, again, a Rocky Mountain elk and a white-tailed deer, it looks like. And then maybe another common animal you see up on the hillside. I should have a black one, I guess. Here's one that you may not, well, anyway, what do you think? Any question, any solution, any answers here?
Pop quiz time.
There's somebody typing.
Nancy says, is it a black-tailed deer?
Correct.
Woo! You go.
Yeah, you can see the black tail here, the big mule deer ears. And yeah, this is probably in, this one's probably September or whatever. These are younger. They're still velvet here. This is probably June. Yeah. And these, who are these guys? Any answers on that? Time for me to drink coffee?
We should hum Jeopardy. Do you think that this is a deer or you think these are elk? Laura says does, fawns, elk.
We have an elk answer?
Bambi?
Bambi?
Elk fawns?
Yep. Yeah, so
there's
the mom. It is definitely not an elk.
Oh, that was a good trick, huh? I thought they were elk too.
They look pretty close, but the elk will be a little paler and the spots will not be as predominant.
Oh, okay.
But other than that,
yes, everybody.
Pretty much hard to tell. And there's a picture of a predator, which we have a bunch of them around here. I'm not sure how displaced they are because of the big fire up in the Diablo Range. has anybody heard any reports of extraneous extra animals in the area? They may have been moved over to Coyote Ridge or yeah, I don't know.
The
I have
only
not heard anything.
The only weird thing that I saw was yesterday when I was coming back from Coyote Valley, I actually saw a huge herd of something. I thought they were elk and I was really surprised, but heading north, they were on the west side of the freeway and they were up above Hellier. So I had just passed the Hellier exit and I was like, what is that? And it was a huge herd. There was like 60, 70, whatever those were. And I wondered if they were running, there because of the fire, like they tried to move farther away.
Well, those were probably elk because yeah, we see them up there quite a bit. They're right up on top of that ridge where that golf course used to be. That's closed now. The ranch golf course is closed, so they got the run of the hill. And there's a big old whoever owned that land 100 years ago was piling up their rocks, and they built a big stone fence on top of that ridge, and they like to hang out along that stone fence up on top of the ridge. But you can see them from Hellier Park, and you can see them from the freeway. So yeah, I don't get to see them much because they don't come this way. They have to cross Silver Creek Boulevard to get over here. But they do cross. They do cross back and forth, and yeah.
Michelle was saying that she actually saw a coyote walking in her neighborhood earlier this week, and that makes a lot of sense. Like a lot of animals would move away from the fires, and so they might be coming into the neighborhoods as something to think about. And if you're worried about them and you want to put water out, that's okay. Just make sure you bring your pets inside.
Yeah.
It's a temporary situation. They will go back as soon as it's done. But
yeah, we have a good number of coyote here. Nancy and I saw a group when we were out whenever it was, a month ago. There's a group. There's a couple pair of coyote that had 6 pups this spring, and we could see them from here. They weren't too far away, so yeah, they're out there. I see them on a game camera pretty much every night. So anyway, let's see. We have so this is the area mainly of the. I should have put a picture up here of the fire because it covered most of this area, especially on the east half of Diablo range. This is the illustration. It shows the hunting zone, elk hunting zone that we're in, basically from the county line up here at the top, the black line, all the way through Hewlett-Packard property, Henrico, and Willow hunting range down here at the bottom, all the way to Highway 152 at the bottom, and then Highway 5 on one side, Highway 101 on the other. That's the Santa Clara County elk hunting zone, and for the last 6 years they have not had any permits in that zone. They did have permits in 2011 and 2012 where they allowed 1 elk to be taken. But anyway, I'm not sure there's going to be any hunting going on in there for the next few years until the herd grows some more. This might be the one that Keith was talking about earlier.
That look familiar, Keith?
So this is the southern Coyote Ridge herd. You can see the Metcalf or the landfill and the dump back in the background here. And they're up on Coyote Ridge, and that's Coyote Valley down below. So
yeah, I think that's somebody else's, but that's a good one.
Yeah, I got another one that came from Teri. I didn't get, so this one, you can see the elk are running actually. They're moving pretty good. Somebody must have scared them. Right past the herd of Justin's cows here. Yeah. Any questions so far?
Oh, so Mike, Dave had a comment or a question. He said that he read that in areas with trails in Colorado, they're showing a decline in herd numbers. And he says that they found that stress on the moms and calves being separated when the elk run from hikers is causing losses. And he says, I've noticed Coyote Ridge on Coyote Ridge that they become scarce as more people show up for the wildflowers. Any thoughts on this?
Yeah, that's true. They are pretty skittish, and they are not tame, of course. So any humans will disturb them and push them back farther into the backcountry. As evidence, the herd that used to come here on the north side is now pushed off, and they're actually over by Hellier, as you saw. For many, many years, maybe 10 years, they hung out on this side of Silver Creek, but then there was a bunch of people from the riding club over here that came by for maybe 3 years or so, and every night they would come through, the elk would move, and finally the elk just moved. They just decided this was too much activity, too many humans around, and they moved. And yeah, that's why I don't like to have people out here at all when it's calving season.
What time of year is that?
Well, it generally starts in February and it runs through May, which is our prime flower watching season, you know. And we've seen that happen. We've been on flower walks down here at the low end of Coyote Ridge, and we've seen cows, elk cows with calves. They'll seek out any spot where it's isolated and there's lots of high grass or brush that the calves can hide in. Although I've seen the calf try to hide behind a little bitty bush, you know, like a 2-foot high bush. He's just trying to crawl under that little bush, and he's bigger than the bush, but he still thinks he can hide in there. But yeah, we should be cognizant of the fact that they are, they are skittish, and they do run, and they're not happy with people around. Although there are places like Yellowstone where they live right in the Yellowstone Village, or up in Humboldt County where they're right next to the highway, and people get out and take pictures of them all the time, and they don't run because it's so accustomed to people every day coming by, right? So, but the ones we have here are not that accustomed to.
Well, it is one thing to think about is that with the Open Space Authority, the resource really does come first before education and recreation and all of that. So you may notice that sometimes the number of people we allow on the ridge is because of the species that are there, like not just Tule elk, but other like plant species and things. So one of the things that I have to do is keep an eye on stuff. And if it starts to look like we're having a negative impact, we'll actually reduce the number of people that we take up there for the season. And it may actually make the rules, help us make rules for the next time to like give it a break or make the season shorter, things like that. And most of the time, like this picture right here, I've never been this close. The first time I saw Tule elk, it was like the farthest ridge that you can see that on the same ridge we're standing on in this picture, they were all the way over there. And I was like, what is up with those funky looking sheep? And then I realized I went, what's up with those sheep? And somebody said, those are elk. I'm like, what? And then they're like, pew, lickety split. They went over the hill and that was it. So most of the time, as soon as they see us, they take off.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to be aware of when I'm leading hikes on the Coyote Ridge is I will try and stay away from those areas that I know that they like to calve in, and one of those is right down by the freeway, just south of Blair Road, on the right hand. As you're taking the lower bench road, they're on the right hand side. I try to stay away from that. And then the other spot is when you're on the bench coming from the Malik entrance, and you would make that loop down through the creek area. Just up the hill from there is a knot that they like to have their calves at. So I try to steer away from those and not disturb them as much as.
That would be really useful information for you to share with our planning department, because one of the things that they're working on right now is creating some gentler trails at Coyote Ridge so that you don't have to go up the really steep part, like, where's the stairs steep.
Yeah.
And I'm concerned it might be going through that section. So we should.
Well, the initial I saw showed them going on the opposite ridge,
Oh,
but they can still see you, of course, because their eyesight is super good. But yeah, we can talk about that.
Nancy was asking if you know about how many, what are the numbers for the elk in Santa Clara County?
I've been playing with that number, and I don't know where it is. So yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But just for initial answer, I'm thinking between 200 and 300. That covers the whole. That covers the whole county, right? The one that we just
That's
talked
the
about
number,
here.
right? Not like 200,000, 300,000, right?
No.
Hopeful thinking.
That would be interesting. But yeah, in this area here, between 200 and 350. And what's also interesting is that they will transition across 152 down here, south or next to San Luis Reservoir. In fact, one of the rangers sent me an email, said they had collared a bunch of elk down here about 3 years ago in this area right next to the camping ground. And she tracked that elk across the road and all the way across here to Henry Cove, and it ended up on Coyote Ridge.
Ooh.
So if you see an elk up on Coyote Ridge with a collar on, you know he's lost.
So having access to wildlife corridors is really good for them then.
Yeah, we need to have a wildlife corridor down, or at least maybe two, along Pacheco State Park and along the reservoir, because last year when I was there at Pacheco, we're doing a wildlife day thing, and a mountain lion got killed right trying to cross 152 that morning when I was there. So we need to do something about the southern part of this range, allowing animals to cross over here, because if you've been on 152, you realize it is a raceway and very dangerous.
So we have about 5 minutes left, just to let you know on time.
Okay, I'm on the almost last slide. So this was from November of last year. California Fish and Wildlife has been in an intensive program to count all the elk in California for the last 3 or 4 years now. 4 years, I think. Yeah. So last November, and you can see all these pretty blue lines on here, the Fish and Wildlife came in with a plane, a small little Piper Cub kind of plane that held 4 people, and all 4 people are looking out the windows, and they fly this grid pattern over, and you can see where they're right next to Coyote. Flew over Coyote Ridge, flew over my house right up here on the corner, and they do this grid pattern, and they count elk as they go along, over to Mount Hamilton, through Hewlett-Packard land, all the way up here, San Antonio Valley, crossed Henry Cove a couple times. They're flying in and out of the airport at San Martin, and they counted elk here. And I'm not sure I think the number was about 100 or 150. I forget now exactly. The term bad wire means bad wire. They're flying through or over the power lines that come from the Metcalf station here. So that's what bad wires is meaning. The little yellow marks are where they spotted herds or small groups. And they did it. They did another survey north up towards Livermore the next day, and yeah, they're planning to do another survey and publish a statewide report before 2023. So the next survey will be about 3 years from now, and yeah, so that's what's going on there. Any questions on that?
That's pretty cool. When it first popped up, but I was scared that was your hiking route.
Yeah. Well, most of the top part here is all burned off now. So it's anyway.
Interesting to see how that comes back. Yeah.
Yeah. So I added one more slide when Teri wasn't looking. So as part of this research program, California Fish and Wildlife is asking people to report sightings. And so Teri can report her sighting from, because we talked about that. If you look at this picture, you see that they missed the whole north section of Coyote Ridge, this piece right in here, where you saw the elk right about there. Anything north of, they didn't go north of Silver Creek Parkway. And so they missed the whole herd. And they didn't count those at all in the survey. So we talked about that a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to adjust the flight pattern for next time. Anyway, here's a place to go to report sightings of Tule Elk. So if you just go to the website, I'm not sure if you can find this on the website. You may be able to. If not, we can share this with you. If anybody has any questions about that, let me know. And any questions so far?
Ron was asking, do they go down to Anderson Reservoir to drink, and will they be affected by the draining of Anderson when they go to fix that dam?
Yeah, they do go down there. They go down. I've actually got video of them because I get down in that area. So right in here by number 4 here, this little number 4, they'll be there quite a bit, and that area, and just to the east of that, those foothills, they're there quite a bit. And a lot of the people who live in Jackson Oaks will see them across the creek here, or if they're driving along the road up to Henry Coe from Jackson Ranch, they will see them sometimes, not always. But yeah, the water will be shrinking down. It won't be completely drained, but there are some cattle tanks along the backside of here in Shingle Valley, and there's also some springs and some ponds that they'll be able to drink from. But yeah, they'll use any resource they can. What's interesting about Tule Elk is that they're kind of evolved in this semi-arid desert environment, and they can go for 2, 3, or 4 days without drinking. And I've seen them go for a long time without getting a drink of water. And sometimes they'll go by a pond and they'll detour in and they'll drink every day. So, but yeah, they can survive without drinking every day. Anything else?
Not at the moment. If you want to go ahead and stop sharing, and then folks can see you and ask any questions if they have any questions.
Yeah, well, the last thing I wanted to ask you, Teri, is if we did another Tule Elk session in a month or 6 weeks or whatever, and maybe talk about other things. There's a lot of stuff I didn't cover, but we could talk about, we could talk about predators some more. We could talk about anomalies, let's say, with them or with their antlers, or we could talk about diseases. We could talk about more programs. I just got an update this morning about a program that's going on in Owens Valley over on the other side of the Sierras, where they've collared a bunch of elk, and I'll probably get some more information on that. Last year they moved. Relocating elk is another fun story to talk about, but they did move a bunch of elk from San Luis Reserve. I think they moved 12 from San Luis to Owens Valley last year to kind of help the genetic flow amongst the herds. And the other thing is that San Luis is a preserve, it's protected, and the herd just keeps growing and growing and growing and growing. So they have to move some elk out of there every year or every other year. Anyway, that's it.
Okay. Thank you so much for doing this, Mike. So it looks like we might have one more question. Do we know if the elk have been negatively impacted by the recent fires?
They have been moved. They will move, and yeah, obviously fire gets them to move. There are some. So I'm not sure where they moved to. I suspect that they might have moved. The ones in San Antonio Valley might have moved north, And there may have been some that moved to the willow, button willow area down by San Luis Reservoir. I haven't seen any move this direction, but I'm sure that some did. I don't have any, it's too early to really hear that. We haven't been able to get out in the Henry Coe Park is still locked down tight. And the last report I heard is that it'll be another week before Henry Coe and that area is contained. They're hoping for 100% containment by next Thursday. But then after that, people will be able to get out in the park and maybe do some surveys and do some checking. But they're pretty mobile. They can move pretty well. And sometimes the ones you want to worry about are the ones that can't be moved or don't move. Like acorn woodpeckers hide in their little nest, and so will owls. Raccoons as well. Those are the ones that probably got impacted the most. Everybody else can get up and go. Coyotes, bobcats, mountain lions, they all can run. And yeah, we should do a story about that. Are we talking about doing a fire after the fire kind of thing?
Yeah, so originally today's program was supposed to be about fires, and I had scheduled this like a month before any of that stuff happened. And so we decided to wait until after the fires were contained so that we could show everybody what open space did during the fires and what was successful and what was not, and how it impacted people close to us and all of this kind of stuff, like sort of like a retrospective. So we're gathering lots of photographs and footage and things like that about the fires now. And now that thankfully it's like almost out, whew, still making smoke, but almost out. And so we're remaining vigilant in case any more storms come. That potential for the second lightning storm really scared us and mobilized us immensely to do fire prevention methods like in all of our preserves, because you never know where the lightning is going to strike, right? So this was a real eye-opener and just a change because of the whole COVID outbreak, and the forces that normally can help with firefighting were not available. And so it's like, wow, what do you do? Thankfully we have people on our staff that can handle tractors and things like that. So yes, we will be doing a program about that. It'll be a little bit later, after everything had a chance for the smoke to settle, basically, and we can see how everything went, and when the danger's gone, then we can discuss it too. So we do have some staff members that had to evacuate, and we do have some community members within the park world, that several actually that did lose their homes, like up in the Santa Cruz fires and things like that. So we want to be sensitive to that too. But thank you so much for doing this, Mike. This is awesome. Thank you. And thank you everybody for coming and taking part in this program. And for sure, we will offer more. I like the idea of doing more. This is cool.
So if anybody has any questions, have them get a hold of me and we can talk about it, or email you and you can forward them on to me.
Sure. Yeah. So my email here is, I'll post it in the chat really quick, but because it's like, so T Rogaway at openspaceauthority.org. Oop, did I spell it right? Yes. So you can go ahead and email me, and I will forward your questions to Mike, and so you can get all your questions answered. So thank you, everybody.